GitLab, and this is our general group conversation. Marcel has the first question, but he isn't present. Moderator, would you like to read the question?
1 minute, please. Okay, sorry about that. So the first question is from Marcel. Can the virtual contribute challenge of beautifying the docs also apply to marketing content at about.gitlab.com? It might be better to make certain improvements in the marketing or product pages and then link to them from docs.gitlab.com.
Yeah, thanks for reading. And Marcel, thanks for asking the first question. This is, I think, hard to answer in general. So I'd love to know what pages we're considering or what page we're talking about. Maybe that will lead to a better answer. I think the generic answer is that the idea is to have the doc page as a single source of truth for everything, including the marketing content. So right now, if you split, like this is the functionality. Let's say product analytics is the functionality. We have a marketing page and a docs page and a troubleshooting page, etc. That's what most companies do. Like it's super hard to find the right page. I had the marketing page is on a static website, and there's documentation, which is on a documentation website, and then the troubleshooting information is somewhere in a knowledge base in Zendesk or something like that. At GitLab, we know that instead of organizing by format, we tried that, it didn't work. We organize by subject. So if it's about product analytics, we'll put all the content on one page. So the page will probably start with like, hey, who is this for? Like who's product analytics useful for? Then talk about what it is and how to use it, etc. But it can also include like a customer reference, like where someone made a ton of progress in their career by using this feature. It can also include troubleshooting information. Like we encourage our support team to add the troubleshooting page information at the bottom of the page. And it can include certification where, hey, if you want to be certified in GitLab product analytics, take this test at the bottom of the page. So that's the idea. Have one page that has all the different formats, just like we do in the handbook. In the handbook, we don't have, hey, this is the section of the handbook that has our standard operating process. This is a section of the handbook that describes our courses. This is the section of the handbook that describes, we have one page about a specific subject matter, like onboarding or like how do we order computers? And then all the information should be there. And that can be both text and video and audio and a link to a test you have to take. Jean, you have the next question. You want to verbalize that?
Thank you, sir. Yes, so regarding slide 7, talking about handbook first, so a little bit of context. My team, the static site editor engineering team, we've got our team page where we document our processes, etc. However, we recently started using the wiki as well to host content that's more detailed or informal or frequently changed in nature. I've been wrestling with this question of whether this information should be in the handbook. And so my question to you is there a guideline or definition about what type of content should be in the handbook or should not be in the handbook? Yeah, just generally your thoughts on these.
Yeah, thanks for asking. So there's a section in the handbook and it says wikis don't scale. I think you'll understand where my answer is going to. Almost every company I know, the knowledge base started with a wiki. And it's more convenient, and I totally agree. It's more convenient to update than a static website. It's quicker. However, every single wiki of purpose I saw, it goes stale over time. They are badly organized and they get out of date. And there's, I think, two reasons for that. It's impossible to make proposals that touch multiple parts of a page or multiple pages. So it makes it very hard to reorganize something, because you can't make a proposal to reorganize something. You have to kind of, there's one version and you edit it page by page. You can only change stuff on one page. So it's hard to like take stuff on 5 pages and rename a concept or something like that. There's also the problem that as you get bigger, you're going to have a separation between the person who kind of writes things and a person who can kind of approve it, who's kind of empowered to make that change. And it's important. Sometimes those roles are the same, and that's great. And at GitLab, we try to do that as much as possible with the DRI, but concept of directly responsible individuals. But sometimes people want permission. For example, if the person doesn't work at GitLab and wants to propose a change, and there tends to be a difference between the people who like have enough time to make the change and the people who can kind of judge whether the change is good. Frequently, people like crave an approval of someone else because they don't feel like they can oversee the consequences of a change. They need the approval, and that's impossible with wikis, and that's why wikis don't scale and grow stale. And I'd encourage us to not use wikis, use the handbook, even though it's extra work. And if any team would be using the handbook, it should be the static site editor team, because your team, the reason it exists is to make sure that people have an easy time using the handbook.
So I agree with you in terms of that definitely addresses the frequently changed nature of content. What about content that might be a little bit more informal or detailed in nature that we might want to share among our team? Is there any type of content that falls into a category of this is not relevant to be in a GitLab handbook page?
Yeah, there's not. If it's important enough to be written up, it's important enough to be in the handbook. And one important thing there is, for example, our troubleshooting section. For example, our support team said, hey, look, we have these troubleshooting tips and they're not relevant. They're relevant only to a small population. However, if you need it, it's really important. And it also makes it a site seem alive. Like, few people complain because the site is too alive. Almost every documentation, the problem is it's stale. And few people complain if there's too many troubleshooting tips, because you just want to fix, you have a problem, that's why you're on that page. So there's no, the handbook is multi-format. That means that it's not only, that goes not only for the type of content, like audio and video and graphics. It goes not only for kind of the purposes, like marketing and using it and explaining it and training someone in it. That also kind of goes for the type of content, the evergreen content and the things that are maybe trivial and ephemeral.
Very much. That answers my question.
Yeah, thanks for asking. Mike.
Thanks, Sid. Well, the tech writing team was pleased to see that the Contribute Challenge was around docs this time. It's a lot of the things we think about all the time. So we thought we'd set up just some tips for folks on how to work efficiently, kind of background information, a review process, and a place to look for ideas and kind of collect issues to work on, although any MR is always welcome as well. So we put all that in an epic. It's kind of a living epic at this point. We're keeping it updated as we further discuss, but feel free to jump into the epic and into a Slack channel that we created to help support the effort along with the static site team.
Thanks for that. Clement?
Hey, Sid. I was wondering if you could share your thoughts on the current progress in our efficiency improvements project. Do you think we should be moving at a faster rate? Because it looks like currently we've only done 10%. which seems like at our current rate, we wouldn't achieve our target.
Yeah, thanks for asking. We completed 10% of the items. That doesn't mean we achieved only 10%. I think we're on schedule, and most of the things like they're in progress. So progress was made, we're just not at 100% yet. I find it hard to kind of say how far along we are, but I think we're tracking as well as I expected. By the way, we won't achieve 100%. This is more like similar to OKRs. This is where like 70% achievement is like the 50-50 where we kind of expect to end up. So I'm pleased with the progress. Every single item is still moving along, which I think is spectacular, and I think we're doing great. Thanks for asking, Philippe.
Hey Sid, on a lighter note, in these times we need something light. Do you think remote work will shift one day to refer something not being done at home? I mean, don't you find it weird that we call remote work something that we're doing at home, whereas we refer to regular jobs, where this is something that you need to go somewhere to actually do it?
Okay, I now understand. So remote work is when you don't do it at the default location, which would be home. Yeah, yeah. The nomenclature is very, very hard. So I did. First of all, I do think that for knowledge workers, working remote is going to be accepted. Now, I'm not sure that that means that the majority of companies will abandon their offices. I think that any company that currently has an office will be tough to get rid of it, and it won't happen. So they'll keep the office. However, you can imagine new companies being created that never get an office, and over time, more and more companies are new companies. So that might very well happen. It's also, you live a bit in a bubble. Like, I thought that the majority of people would be able to work from home. But if you look at the surveys, about 40% of the professions in the US are doable from home. So there's just a ton of jobs where you need to show up on site, whether you work in a hospital or drive a truck or work as in a restaurant or things like that. So that was eye-opening to me. I thought it was the reverse. I thought 60% was knowledge work that could happen remote, and it was 40%. That's not an answer to your question, but I guess that it was an opening for a discussion. Cool, Eric.
Yep. Hey, Sid. So you highlighted middle management as a risk in your pre-recorded video. I was curious if you could elaborate on that, and then what your mitigation strategy will be.
Yeah, not middle management per se. Like, the risk is middle management. The risk is the increasing number of layers in middle management. And I'm not sure it merged already. Let me have a quick look at DMR. It didn't, so it's good that I'm looking at this page. So it's the risk is more layers of middle management. And the problems it can cause is people start to focus on being liked more than results, because it's hard to attribute results. It's harder to attribute success to the right person. Like, the manager might take credit for success, but blame gets pushed downward. There's a natural tendency to overly focus on underperforming team members instead of highly performing team members. There's a risk that you start peanut buttering rewards, because you don't have to defend if you give everyone an equal amount of like salary increases and bonuses. mistakes might be more risky for your career than really good initiatives are beneficial to it. And it might distance people from the ultimate customer. We try to also address each of these, try to prevent politics. We try to drive praise downward in the organization. We should start measuring whether we are like making sure we distinguish between the high performers and low performers. And we should incentivize people to take calculated risk. And we should have focus on customer results. So that's the context. Like, middle management is great, like we need it, otherwise you can scale the company. But it has some inherent risks which we need to mitigate as far as we can. And there's some request for the merge request link. I'll put that in the chat. There you go.
Cool, that was a great Amar. I appreciate the context there.
Thanks. And by the way, this is not my insight. This is insight from smart people that have lived through this before. Christopher, thanks for asking a question.
Sure thing. Yeah, just back on follow-up to John's question earlier. Basically, we talk very strongly about handbook first and not having exceptions like wikis as an example. But we do have the idea of dog fooding and that being a priority. So I'm trying to think of a case where we could use wikis to basically both learn and make a better user experience for our customers with using our wiki capability. Are there cases you can think of that we could potentially do that, but not compromise our handbook?
Yeah, I could think of that. For example, the people working on wikis should probably use a wiki every now and then. That would make sense, and we'd probably want to denote that. Right now, we're not investing a ton in wikis, and I think that is because I don't think we're the only, that we're unique in the insight that wikis tend to not scale and get messy over time. So I think what we should concentrate on as a company is improving static websites where they're getting as easy to use as wikis. Wikis are just easier to use, so we should improve it. And that's what our static site editor group is for. Like, hey, let's make our static site easier to use because it's been tough to use. Now, we won't maybe not perfectly get there, but we want to get a lot closer. If there's a team working on wikis and they want to use the GitLab wiki for some of their work, I totally understand. I think we need to clearly demarcate that. Hey, this is why we're doing that, but that would be a great use case. I think the static site editor team would be the last team that would need to do that. What do you think, Christopher?
Yeah, I think that makes sense. That's a good call out that a team could effectively explicitly state, hey, we're working, we'll call it suboptimal, though I don't know if in this particular case it's suboptimal to learn across a different vector. So, but to be explicit about it. And,
yeah, we're not using this guideline because the dog fooding overrides the wikis don't scale guideline.
Right, it makes sense to me.
Thanks. Clement?
Yeah, I noticed that recently you got back into programming with your free time with product analytics, something related to Snowplow, I think, from what I was reading. Could you share more about kind of what led to this, what you hope to achieve? And earlier you mentioned not wanting to have engineers work more on GitLab during their free time because now they have potentially more time to work on GitLab. And are you concerned that this work may unintentionally encourage the team to also kind of work on GitLab more during their free time?
Yeah, thanks for that. I started with this, I wanted to take programming back up. Like 5 years ago, I was developing. I was a mediocre or below mediocre programmer who took up programming very late in my life after. But I thought it was fun. It's fun to create something. And now with the quarantine, I get a ton of extra time. And I wanted to do something creative. My wife was doing creative things in the evenings. And I wanted to do something similar. So I thought, what can I make? My first thing was, I called it WordPress for food and beverage. And I'll link the blog post in the Zoom chat. That was fun. But then me and Kenny had a conversation about how to add product analytics to GitLab. And he was looking, what's the minimum iteration? And there's a project called PostHog, and he wanted to add that as a GitLab managed app and do it that way. Now that's a great idea. It's a small step. And but the problem is if you do it like that, then at some point you have to migrate the app over time. And I think with Sentry, we're doing a pretty good job at that. With Jaeger, we haven't even started that. And it creates its own problems. And I like PostHog. It's a nice project, but it didn't look super daunting to kind of recreate something like that. So I'm like, okay, it can probably do that. So how hard can it be? Well, turned out the GitLab routing was hard enough for me to get stuck. So Dimitri had to help me. And he thought I wasn't, he looked at my code and he's like, oh, GitLab is not, Sid is not getting anywhere. But it's like that old language you forgot and you start speaking it again, you kind of get better over time. Then I realized that if you're going to do product analytics, you receive a ton of events, and it has to be, you got to process these events pretty efficiently. So doing that in a real stack is kind of tricky. Because also like you got a rate limit, like if some app got super popular, you're going to receive a ton of events and you'll hit your rate limit, but you still have to kind of receive them, look at where they're from, and then look at the rate limit. So I'm like, oh, this is not going to scale in Ruby. I have to make this in Go. And I don't know Go. So that was another adventure. And it's, I think, 200 lines of Go code now, but it cost me a ton of time, but I learned stuff. It was fun learning static typing. I only can program Ruby, so it was fun learning something new. And I had to test it. It was pretty hard. Anyway, I enjoyed myself. I think it's the MR is in a reasonable state. Still want to plug, I still need help routing from Workhorse to the Go app that I made. I need help packing it into Omnibus. And the UX is horrible, like the design is horrible. So if someone smarter than me can look at that, be much appreciated. But generally, I think product analytics is a great thing to have. Like if you have an app, you don't just want to know how it performs, like how many CPU it used and stuff like that, but also how are people using it? So I think it's something that should appeal to a lot of users of GitLab. And also, I think most people now want to reduce kind of third-party analytics. So for all the people running GitLab self-managed, it will be first-party analytics. So might be something. Anyway, I'm having fun. I fixed the tests yesterday, and on Sunday there was a lot of work, but that was really fulfilling. I love our test. I put out a thanks in the thanks channel. And yeah, I'd encourage everyone to do the same. Do something that's not part of your day job. With me, it's GitLab in this case, but it doesn't have to be GitLab. But do a new creative endeavor that you're normally not doing in your day job. And so I'm not super afraid. I'm not encouraging people to do more of what they already do. Do something different. And then GitLab, it's everyone can contribute. So you can work on GitLab, but also you see with the food and beverage can also be something else.
Is there a channel for discussing those kinds of side projects and that sort of thing? Like maybe we could find people to collaborate internally? Yeah,
I'm not sure. If you want to collaborate with me at the WordPress for food and beverage, there's a form linked from the blog post. One GitLab team member already signed up, but I'm not. It's not part of the job requirements at GitLab. Cool. We're at time. Thanks for all the questions. I appreciate it. Have a great rest of your day. Bye.
Bye, thank you.